The second-year students had Quinn completely surrounded. As he took a step forward to try to break out of the encirclement, a wind strike came towards him. He managed to lift his hand to block the attack, but at the same time, another slash was felt against his back. 12 of 20 health points. The attacks continued with a mixture of abilities, but most of them were weak elemental abilities, such as level 2 wind users and earth users. However, when he was being attacked from all sides, the attacks quickly added up. Quinn continued to block strikes coming from the front of him, but was still being hit from all sides. 11 of 20 health points, 10 of 20 health points, 9 of 20 health points. There was a constant cycle. Once he was injured to a certain degree, Quinn's blood bank would auto-activate and heal him, but even with the blood bank, there was no getting out of this one. But he knew this would happen to some degree. He never expected to win in the first place, ignoring the pain of the strikes and instead trying to avoid all the attacks. He rushed forward towards one of the students. This time, 2 hits had hit him from each side, causing 2 big slashes on his body. 8 of 20, 7 of 20 health points. But he didn't care. His speed was quick, and using the strength in his legs, he was able to move himself forward and grab one of the second-year students. He quickly went behind the student, grabbing his arm, and at the same time, kept one of his claws towards the student's neck, using him as a meat shield. The second years were hesitant to attack, afraid they might hit their fellow classmate. Quinn continued to walk backwards with the student until his back was up against the wall. "You and I both know you're not going to hurt him," Momo said. "If you attack too deep and kill him, you'll be in trouble. Attack too shallow, and we will pounce on you and make you wish you were dead." Quinn hated to admit it, but Momo was right. He couldn't kill the student, and at the same time, the second he turned his back on them, they would take him out. So Quinn was left with only one thing. He no longer had his claw hand out, but then started to choke the student from behind, wrapping his arm around his neck. He used his strength and carried on until he eventually passed out. 50 XP gained, 275 of 400 XP. "No point wasting good XP," Quinn said. As soon as the student fell to the ground, the attacks came out fast and furious from the others. Quinn was able to block most of them. Now his back was up against the wall. He started dodging a lot of the strikes, which made him think back to the test center. The situation he was in was similar to the agility test, where holographic spikes came at him. However, these attacks were more powerful and were greater in number. Eventually, Quinn let a strike get in. 6 of 20 health points. Suddenly, the attacks had stopped, and Momo had stood forward with his whip in his hand. Seeing the whip, Quinn remembered that a single attack last time had brought his health points down by 7 points. If he were to receive another attack from it right now, he would be brought down to below 0. Quinn still didn't know what would happen when his health points would reach 0, but at the same time, this wasn't the time to find out. He had no choice. He would have to use the blood bank to heal himself. Even if the others did see him use this, it wouldn't reveal he was a vampire, but they would just think it was some type of self-healing ability. The problem was that Quinn had already displayed abnormal strength. If he then displayed abnormal healing, things wouldn't add up. A student couldn't have 2 abilities apart from rare cases, which meant it would only lead to Quinn being asked more questions. Just as Quinn was deciding what to do, Momo sensed something and moved his head at the last second. As he did, a black ball came flying through the air and went past his head. Then the black ball stopped mid-air and suddenly started moving back towards Momo. Momo lashed his whip at the ball, slicing it in half. As he turned around, he saw Vorden standing there. When he looked to see what had happened to the rest of the second years, he could see a few had already been taken down, and those who hadn't been were busy engaging in combat with Layla and Aaron. "So, you got free, huh?" Momo said. "Do you not remember what happened to you last time the 2 of us fought?" Momo taunted. "Last time you fought against that weakling. This time you're fighting me," Raten said. "I'm not as nice as Vorden." Raten lifted both hands, and with them, 2 more black balls from the ground lifted up. Vorden swung his hands in the air, and the black balls followed the same path. There was no need for Vorden to use his hands when using his telekinesis ability, but it allowed him to focus his mind better. Doing this moved the balls at greater speed and precision. After all, he wouldn't be able to use it as well as Layla, who had had the ability most of her life. The balls flowed in a similar pattern to his hands, striking in different directions. However, Momo would simply step forward, move back, or turn his body slightly, avoiding each of the balls. He then grew tired and grabbed one of the balls mid-air that was heading straight for his face. "Looks like you really don't remember what happened last time." Momo clenched his fist tightly, destroying the black ball held in his hands. He then swung his whip, destroying the other without even looking where it was. Quinn wanted to help. While Momo's back was turned, he tried to go in for a strike, but before he even took a step, the whip came flying out and landed just in front of him. "Don't even think about it," Momo said. Before Quinn had taken a single step, Momo had already acted. Then Quinn waited once again for the right moment, and when he thought it was right, he tried moving in again, but the same thing had happened. Momo swung at his whip before Quinn had moved. "It can't be," Quinn thought. So far, Momo hadn't displayed anything revealing his ability, but just now, and how he had acted before, it seemed like it was part of his ability. There were two guesses Quinn had. He either had some type of mind-reading ability or future-seeing ability. If that was the case, then the fight ahead would be a tough battle. Quinn's guess about Momo was nearly spot on. Momo could see 2 seconds ahead into the future, although it wasn't as clear as others might think. His ability was activated through his eyes. When he turned on his ability, a new type of vision would appear. Everywhere Momo looked, there was an outline of what a person or object was going to do next. When Momo's back was turned and the black ball had come towards him, he could slightly feel the outline of the ball touching him, allowing him to move his head just in time. Just 2 seconds before Quinn had even begun moving towards Momo, his outline had already shown where and what Quinn was planning to do. It was a strong ability that took years for Momo to get the hang of at first. Just because one could see the future didn't help out in any other aspects. Momo's strength, speed, and reaction time all had to be trained with his ability. Even though Momo's ability was a rare one that was available on the marketplace, not many people opted for it for these reasons. But Quinn wasn't the only one who had figured out Momo's ability. Raten had as well. "Who cares if you know what I'm going to do?" Raten shouted. "All I need to do is do something you can't block." Raten then started running towards him. Momo swung his whip, while Raten held out his hand, slowing the whip down with his telekinesis ability. The whip slowed down enough, allowing him to jump over the strike. Then, with his other hand, something started to form. It looked like water was starting to surround his hand. With another swing, a water blade followed. Momo quickly moved to the side, avoiding one strike, but what quickly followed was a barrage of water strikes. Then, at the same time from behind, another 2 black balls had been lifted and were coming right at him. Momo could see the black balls coming at him, and he knew he could do nothing but take a hit. He opted to avoid the water strikes, the more powerful of the attacks, and moved so the balls would hit his back. After being hit with the black balls, Momo moved away from Vorden, creating distance between the two. "I have to admit, I didn't expect you to be able to use 2 abilities. You didn't do something like this last time. It looks like you were hiding a trump card after all," Momo said. "But you weren't the only one holding back last time." While in his right hand he held a whip, something started to form in his left hand. At first, it looked just like a bunch of light particles forming something, but then, eventually, another whip appeared. Only this felt and looked different, as if it were almost alive. Just from holding it alone, the whip would continuously move like a snake. "Let me show you the difference between the second years and first years," Momo said. Even though Erin was currently busy fighting the other second-year students, she couldn't help but sense the power in the room. So he has a soul weapon after all. While the distance between Momo and the others was far away, Layla had managed to make a break and get away from the other second-year students. Honestly, Erin was doing fine dealing with them on her own, and she wasn't much help in the first place. She quickly went to Quinn's side and could see he was badly injured. It wasn't so much that he couldn't move, but enough to say he was out of the fight for now, at least. "Do you need some blood?" Layla whispered. "No, I'm fine. I'm not in any danger. Don't worry about that. I just don't want to reveal anything in front of all these people." "I understand," Layla said as she looked at Vorden. "Your friend, I hate to admit it, but he's strong." "Yeah." After looking at Vorden now and seeing how he fought so skillfully, as if he had done it 100 times before, he was even using 2 abilities effortlessly. Quinn quickly realized there wasn't much he knew about Vorden, and that he probably had his very own secrets that he was hiding from everyone, similar to himself. But again, instead of escaping when he was freed and running away, he had decided to come help. Although Quinn wasn't strong enough to help now, in the future, he would repay this kindness. Now, with Momo's soul weapon, his confidence grew. He swung his soul whip, and it started to move at lightning speed. In response, Raten created a wall of water with one hand and started to slow down the whip with the other, but the telekinesis ability was useless and didn't seem to do anything to slow the whip down. Then, when the whip had reached the wall of water, it suddenly grew in length and wrapped around Raten's arm. Momo pulled forward, dragging Raten to the ground, and then swung out his other whip, lashing against his back. Raten tried rolling to avoid the lashes, but it seemed like the whip was following him, predicting where he would roll to next. Raten had been lashed several times, and now his back was covered in blood. Then, with Raten's other hand, he formed a small water blade. He knew that the whip would be too strong to cut, so instead he went for his own hand, completely cutting it off from his own body. The whip was no longer attached to his body, and at the same time, so was his hand. Although, unlike one would expect for blood, is not drawn everywhere. Raten was using an absurd amount of energy, concentrating to stop his blood from spewing out from the wound with his telekinesis ability. And he honestly didn't know how much longer he could keep it up. "Damn you!" Raten shouted. "If only this body wasn't so hurt from before. Now you've gone and done it. You think a soul weapon is strong enough to defeat us? Well, think again. Little one, it's your turn. It's time to give this man hell." Just then, the doors to the assembly hall were swung wide open, and came a tall, silver-haired female, and standing behind her was Peter. "I command everyone to halt this instant," she said. "If anyone does not obey this command, prepare to be punished." The woman standing next to Peter had long silver hair that went down to her waist. On her head, she was wearing a beret, and by her side was her trusty rapier sword that was jagged and looked to be made from a long beast bone. She had a feeling that resonated off her body. She looked like the older sister type, who you were able to trust to get you out of trouble when you needed it. As soon as she had entered the room, at that moment, everyone froze, all except for one student. A second-year student who was too heated in the moment. He had finally seen Erin drop her guard. He continued to charge forward and was ready to attack, but before even a second could pass, the female teacher who had entered the room was right by the student's side, and a few moments later, he had collapsed on the floor with the back of his foot all bloody. When did she get over there? Hey, look at his ankles. Do you think she did that? As Momo looked at who had entered the room, he immediately put his soul weapon away. Momo knew a lot of the teachers and high-ranking people in the academy. After all, he had already been here a year, and the person who had entered the room was not to be messed with. When she said whoever didn't listen to her would be punished, she meant it. The female's name was Fay Dallam. She was a sergeant at the academy and was mostly in charge of squad training. Anyone else but her, Momo said. Not only that, but her ability was super speed, the worst matchup for Momo. No matter how far ahead he could see in the future, her speed was simply too fast to react to. Not that he had planned to go against her anyway. He had already made that mistake last year when Fay was still only a private at the academy. Those of you who are injured, go to the doctor's office to be treated immediately, while the rest of you head to the dorms and stay inside until you're called out again. Do you understand? Fay said. Most of the first-year students were silenced. They had no clue who she was or what was happening right now. Then, from the lack of people answering her with a reply, Fay drew her rapier once more, and after seeing this, the students immediately answered, "Yes, miss." Vorden had gone to the hospital carrying his arm in his hand. The second-year students went to their own separate part of the building that was located somewhere else to get treated, while out of the first-year students, no one was really hurt apart from Vorden and Quinn. This time, Quinn had no choice but to head to the doctor's office. His clothes were all bloody, and he had lost a lot of blood, but once he had been out of combat for more than 10 minutes, his body started to heal itself. After successfully attaching Vorden's arm back to his body, Haley, the school doctor, went up to check on Quinn. When she asked him to take off his shirt so she could directly heal his wounds, she noticed that the markings had mostly already healed. "What is this? For this much blood, the wounds should be a lot bigger." Quinn started to laugh nervously. "Yeah, my friend has a healing ability and managed to heal me a bit before I got here." "Oh, another healer?" Haley said, surprised. "Well, if you get the chance, send them down here. Their ability is quite good, and it looks like they have done a splendid job. I could do with help, and I would love to have a student of my own." "Sure," Quinn replied. Haley then proceeded to complete healing the rest of Quinn's wounds on his body, and after she was done, there was not a mark on him. During Quinn's own healing process, his body had used up quite a bit of energy, and once again, the message had appeared stating he was hungry. Blood bank, 90 of 100. After consuming some blood from his blood bank, he no longer felt hungry and didn't have to worry about going on a frenzy for at least another 2 days. Once Quinn and Vorden had arrived back in their rooms, they were told not to leave until they were notified. Once in a while, a private would call out a student's name, and they would be taken somewhere for questioning. Inside their own rooms were Vorden, Peter, and Quinn. "Thanks for calling the sergeant when you did. Otherwise, Quinn and I would have been goners by now." "No problem," Peter replied, still feeling bad about the whole thing. Although he had done the right thing by getting Fay, he still felt bad for having tricked Vorden into going to the hall in the first place. "What do you think will happen to the second years?" Quinn asked. I'm not too sure," Vorden replied. "If this were a one-on-one incident, then I'm pretty sure they would have ignored it. But this time there were several students involved. Most likely they will look for one person to pin the blame on." Meanwhile, inside one of the integration rooms, a large, muscular man with forearms the size of thighs was sitting opposite the second-year student Momo, and on his shoulder, the man had the rank of general. His name was Duke King, and he was head of the second-year students. "Of all the people, it had to be Fay to stop us," Momo complained. "I did as you asked, and now I might pay for it." "Will you relax? Nothing will come of this. I promise you that," Duke replied. "You're only students, and these types of things happen, and I will vouch for you." "Really? So this won't all fall back on me then?" Momo asked. Then Duke stood up and went up behind Momo and whispered in his ear. "Of course, as long as no one finds out about our little secret," Duke said with a smile. Judging by the fact that the person integrating them didn't seem surprised by what they had said, it seemed like they had already gathered everything they needed from the other students and were just doing this as a formality. The next day had arrived, and it was a weekend for students. Just like any other school, students did not have to attend classes and were free to do as they wished around the city. Although the curfew still existed, they had to be back in their dorm rooms before 10 in the evening, and they were not allowed to leave the city. However, for the leaders at the school, their day was not as relaxing as the students, for a meeting had been called. Inside the academy on the top floor, the leaders of the academy had gathered in a fairly large meeting hall. A large table was centered in the middle of the room. The table was split into 2 different sections. At the head of the table, there were 4 seats in total. One of the seats was a little bigger than the others, and this was where the head general of the academy would sit. Currently, this seat remained empty for the meeting. In the other seats, usually by the head general's side, were the 3 generals of the school. There was the head of the second-year students, Duke, with his large arms and muscular build. Then the head of the first-year students, Nathan, who looked the complete opposite of Duke. He was small in size and wore glasses. He was always casually dressed for important occasion, which annoyed Duke. The 2 of them did not get along. Lastly, there was the 3rd general, who was head of staff, and the rest of the privates and teachers in the academy. Currently, his seat was also empty. The 2 generals sat in their seats, waiting for the others to arrive, and as usual, there was silence between the 2 of them. Then finally, the doors opened, and 8 people had arrived, all wearing the military uniform, and each one of them had the rank of sergeant displayed. Out of these 8 sergeants, it included Leo, the beast weapons teacher, Fay, the head of squads, and Haley, the school doctor. The 8 sergeants sat in their seats opposite to the generals, and finally, it was time for the meeting to start. Fay was the first to stand and speak. "We are here today to conduct the meeting on what to do with the second-year students, who were involved in the case, involving primarily the first-year student known as Vorden Blade and the students who are part of Dell's class and Leo's beast weapons class. Fay then pressed a little button on a controller she held in her hand. In front of the generals and the other sergeants, a holographic report was being displayed to them. I believe you have all read the reports, but this is here just for your reference. I would like to ask your opinion on how these students should be punished, General Duke. Punished, Duke said. I see no reason for these students to be punished. If you look at the report, it seems like Vorden was the first to attack the others. They were simply retaliating. These types of things happen all the time. But then why gather the rest of the first-year students? Nathan casually added. It seems to me that other students had gotten involved. I agree the students fight all the time, and we purposely do nothing to stop this. But this seemed a little too much. No? Fine. Further restrictions will be put on the second years and first year students. They shall only meet when necessary. I will be in charge of issuing out the punishments to the second year students. Is that okay with you, Nathan? Nathan simply shrugged as if he didn't really care about the matter in the first place. He had only made his argument to annoy Duke. I urge the rest of the sergeants to take extra precautions, said Fay. It was only recently we had the death of a student in our school. Unlike Brandon, Vorden is an original. If his family were to get involved, it would not be good for the academy. Shh, filthy scum, Duke said under his breath. The military didn't have a good impression of originals. When the war started, they were the ones who risked their lives to save the people of the planet. It wasn't until it looked like humans would lose the war that the originals came forward and shared their power with everybody, and not even all of them did that. Then Haley stood up. I would like to talk about the matter involving the two students with strange wounds on their bodies. Were there any reports about a beast escaping from one of the portals? Your father, who is not present at the moment, reported that there was no such thing. Even using the radar, we were unable to trace anything, Duke replied. If it wasn't the beasts, then just what caused those wounds? Haley thought as she sat back down in her seat. How is the preparation for the portal outing coming along for the first-year students? Leo asked. Everything has been all set up, Nathan said. A green portal has been selected for the students to go through, and the base has made preparations for their arrival. It should all go smoothly next week. Do you know what planet the expedition will take place on? Leo asked. That way, I will be able to better prepare my students. It's best to ask your students to pack some sun cream and their sunglasses as they will be arriving on the planet Kaladi, Nathan replied. Planet Kaladi, a planet that was mostly covered in desert and contained low-tier beasts. Its day cycles were also vastly different compared to those of Earth. Instead of the 24-hour day and night cycle that Earth has, Kaladi contained a 72-hour cycle. It was brilliant for those who loved the sunlight and heat. After the incident with second years, Quinn realized that although he had gained a lot of strength compared to what he was before, there were still others that he wasn't strong enough to fight against. Although Momo was strong in the group of second years, he was nowhere near the top of the food chain. There were many higher levels, and even originals, whose powers couldn't be measured. And even out of the first-year students, there were those that were powerful, who included his good friend Vorden and Aaron. If Quinn wished to get on their level, he would have to get stronger. The easiest way for him to get stronger was by consuming as many different types of blood as he could possible, but there was a major problem. After the death of Brandon and the second-year incident, security around the academy had been tighter than ever. More soldiers were put on patrol, and it seemed like they were keeping an eye on everyone. For now, while tensions were high in the academy, it was best that he laid low. So that left him with another option to improve his fighting skills. Quinn still hadn't learnt the two skills yet, but just learning them wasn't going to be enough. After watching Vorden, he realized he needed to also learn how to use them, so he needed experience. Hey, I'm going to head into town to grab some supplies. Do you want to come with? Vorden asked. Quinn hesitated for a while. Originally, he had planned to meet up with Layla to practice the hammer strike, but at the same time, he hadn't been able to relax in a while. In his last school, Quinn had never made any friends and was the lonesome type, but now was his opportunity to go out and have some fun. One day wouldn't hurt, right? Yeah, sure, I'll come along, Quinn replied. What about you, Peter? Vorden asked. Peter had been avoiding the two of them for a while, but since they were roommates, it was almost impossible. He still felt bad about the whole situation, but he had finally made up his mind. He never wanted to do anything like that again. Yeah, I'll come as well. The three of them then proceeded to head into town. They went ahead and grabbed some food, watched a movie, and had a good laugh. But as they were outside, Peter spotted a group of high-level first years he had met before. They were the same people who Peter had hung out with at the canteen. As Peter had made eye contact with the group, they had signaled to him they wanted to talk. "Hey guys, I just remembered that I promised to meet up with a few people from school tonight," said Peter. "It was great hanging out with you guys, but I'll see you when you get back to the dorm." Vorden looked at Quinn, realizing that they both thought Peter's words sounded suspicious. "Hey Peter, you know if something is up, tell me, I will help you out," Vorden said. "No, it's nothing, I promise. I really did make some good friends. I have to rush off now. Bye, you guys," Peter said as he took off out of sight of the other two. No matter what, Peter didn't want an incident like last time to happen. He would deal with the problems himself. Vorden was strong, but from the fight last time, clearly Vorden wasn't strong enough to handle the upper years, and Peter knew they were the ones behind everything. Peter finally turned a corner into an alleyway where 5 first-year students were patiently waiting. "Took you long enough." The student standing in front of the group had a scar on his chin, and his name was Earl. He was the leader of the first-year group who was directly under Momo's gang. Then suddenly, Earl went and grabbed Peter, throwing him up against the wall. "What the hell do you think you were doing calling the teacher the other day?" Earl said. "Now Momo and the others are giving us a hard time for relying on you." He then punched Peter in the stomach, causing him to kneel over and fall to the ground. "Why should we be the ones to be punished? This is all your fault." Earl ran up and kicked Peter once again in the stomach. The kick was hard, and Peter's body was starting to shake. He felt like any second now he was going to throw up the ice cream he had just eaten with the other two. Earl walked over to Peter and bent down to grab his hand. He held one of Peter's fingers and snapped it back hard and fast. At the same time, a scream was heard. "What the hell? Gag this wimp, will you?" One of the students then ripped a part of his shirt and shoved it into Peter's mouth. "Now we have another job for you, Peter, and you better do it right this time, you understand? Just nod if you agree." Peter then shook his head. He had already decided that no matter what, he would never betray Vorden or Quinn again. "What, are you saying no?" Peter then nodded, giving his answer to Earl. The vein on the side of Earl's head was now popping out as the anger inside him grew. A lowly first-year student dared to go against him, and a level 4 student had to work under someone else. This wasn't the life he was expecting to have at the academy, and he needed to take out his anger somehow. Earl then immediately grabbed Peter's fingers and started to snap them one by one. Each time he would break a finger, he would ask Peter if he was willing to help them, but each time, Peter shook his head. In the end, all 5 of Peter's fingers had broken, and Peter still hadn't agreed to their request. "Hey Jerry, get over here," Earl shouted. One of the first-year students standing behind Jerry came over and knelt down. "Do your thing, Jerry." Then Jerry placed his hand on top of Peter's, and slowly a warm feeling was felt, and the bones in Peter's fingers were starting to take shape. They reformed to what they once were, and he had been healed. Then a big smile on Earl's face could be seen. He grabbed Peter's fingers again and repeated the process again and again. Eventually, after an hour had passed of breaking, hurting, and rehealing Peter's mind had given in. Without him realizing it, he no longer wanted to feel the pain, and nodded, agreeing to their request. "Good, see? Now, if you had done that in the first place, we wouldn't have had to go through all that," Earl said. "Now this time, you better do it right and be sure not to involve anyone." Students only received 10 credits a day as an allowance, but that didn't stop their parents from sending them extra money while they were in school. The richer students were free to spend and buy whatever they liked, and sadly, the richer students were usually the stronger ones as well. Although the city didn't open up to any regular civilians, it was still open to all the workers. The city was full of military personnel, but not all of them were soldiers. There were still cooks that were needed, admin staff, engineers, building workers, and even general people who would run the shop. They had all been granted special access from the military, and in return, were given nice living accommodations, and didn't have to worry about life in the outside world. So although they worked for the military, they weren't required to be relied on for fighting, unless absolutely necessary. While the two were walking, Quinn couldn't help but think back to the fight between Vorden and Momo. "Hey, Vorden, I know you said your ability resets every day, but you never said you could wield two abilities at once?" Quinn asked. "Didn't I?" Vorden said with an awkward smile. "Well, there are some in my family that can even hold three." "Really? So how does it exactly work?" "Well, if I told you our family secrets, Quinn, you would have to become a part of our family. Either that, or I'd have to kill you." For a second, there was an awkward silence between the two, as Quinn wasn't sure if Vorden was joking or not. "Relax, will you?" Vorden said. "But yeah, I honestly can't tell you anything. You know, original rules and all." Vorden belonged to one of the original families that had decided to keep their ability within their family, meaning the only people who knew how to copy other abilities were the Blades. Of course, Vorden wasn't allowed to talk to anyone about their ability. "Yeah, sorry about that, but if you don't mind me asking, if you copy an ability you've never received before, how are you able to fight with them so well?" "Let me show you something," Vorden said. The two of them continued to walk down the street, which was filled with shops, until Vorden eventually stopped just outside a game store. The two of them headed inside, and there were all types of games on the shelves. At the very back of the shop was a VR pod for people to test out before they bought anything. Just like everything else, even the gaming technology had improved significantly after the war. Then Vorden pointed at the VR capsule. "You see that thing? I grew up playing on that." "What?" Quinn thought, but then Quinn remembered Leo mentioning something about a VR game that was popular among students. He said if he wanted to get fighting experience, it would be good if he played a certain game. Is this what he was talking about? There's a popular game played in the outside world and within the military schools called Power Fighter. The game is simple. It gives you an open, empty room, and the two of you fight until one loses. Although it sounds simple, the game itself is used to help people train. The VR capsule can record all attributes of your body. Anything you do in the real world, you can do in the game. The only thing that it can't do is record your ability. Vorden then walked up to the capsule and touched the front of the capsule where there was a round ring. A holographic display appeared with the game settings on the top. Vorden then placed his hand on the holographic display and a notification sound was heard. "Welcome, user ID VB copy," the machine said. As Vorden logged into the game, his user ID's information could be seen along with a dummy model of his fighter, which looked nothing like Vorden. It displayed the total number of fights Vorden had and how many wins and losses. Although Vorden quickly went off that screen onto another, too quickly for Quinn to see anything. Then Vorden was suddenly on an ability tab. The list seemed almost endless. "Wait, I thought you said the game couldn't record your ability," Quinn asked. "It can't, but so the game was even more realistic, and so it could be used as a training tool. It uploads into its database every ability that is shared out there in the world that we know today. Of course, only the ones that are made public. So original abilities and abilities that have yet to be discovered aren't on this list, including my own. However, I can select any ability I want. Even if I can't perform it in the real world, I can practice with it in the game." Quinn finally understood how Vorden was able to become well adverse with multiple different abilities. This was something that would only greatly benefit someone like him, who was able to use whatever ability he wished. Most people who were playing the game would want to get stronger and better at using their abilities. That meant they would usually only select their own ability. What was the point of selecting something that you could never use in the real world, unless you just wanted to have the experience? The game is actually very popular with the other military schools, Vorden continued to explain, so much so that the military has designed its own servers, so it only connects to other schools, but you can also just play with the outside world as well. Before you enter the game, you can even input your power level. This way, it will match you with those people around the same level. People can lie about their level, but those types of people will never get better at fighting, bullying those weaker than them all the time. Quinn then walked up to the capsule and started to inspect it. It sounded amazing and was exactly what Quinn needed. This way, he was able to practice against other students without others realizing it was him. Then, when Quinn lifted up the tag on it, there were more zeros on the thing than he had ever seen before. There was no way he could afford such a thing. Maybe some of the other students could be sent credits from their family, but not Quinn. Vorden started to laugh. "Don't worry about it. You don't need to buy one yourself. The academy has a room full of them. Really? Come on, let's head back and give it a go.